I 34 male and what you call a numbers guy. I work as a forensic accountant and actuary, which basically means I analyze risk and track money for a living. I don't guess, I verify. My ex-wife was a complete opposite. She was a PR director. Her entire life was about spin, optics, and controlling the narrative. She was beautiful, charismatic, and absolutely convinced she was the main character of everyone else's reality. We'd been married for 5 years, and for the last 8 months, I felt a shift. It wasn't subtle. She started guarding her phone like it was a nuclear football, picked fights about me working too much while she went on sudden weekend work trips, and constantly accused me of checking out other women. I knew the signs. Projection is a hell of a drug. But I didn't scream, and I didn't confront her immediately. I just started digging. I tracked the finances. I noted the mileage on the cars, and I waited. The climax of our marriage didn't happen in a lawyer's office. It happened at her parents' 40th wedding anniversary party at their massive lake house. Picture the scene. It's 8 p.m., catered food, open bar, about 60 people including her entire extended family, our mutual friends, and a few of her colleagues. Sarah loves an audience. She thrives on attention. I was standing near the bar, swirling my drink, watching her whole court. She looked tipsy, her cheeks flushed with that manic glint that usually meant drama was incoming. She grabbed the microphone after her dad's speech. "I have something to say," she announced, her voice cracking just enough to garner sympathy. The crowd went quiet. I didn't want to ruin Mom and Dad's night, but I can't pretend anymore. I can't stand here and play the happy wife. She pointed a manicured finger directly at me. "He's cheating on me. Everyone needs to know. He's been sneaking around for weeks, meeting someone in the city, lie about his hours. I found the receipts. I know you're cheating. Everyone knows." A collective gasp went through the crowd. My mother-in-law looked like she was going to faint. My friends looked at their shoes. It was a masterclass in ambush. She knew if she painted herself as a victim first. Anything I said later would look like defensive lying. She wanted to nuke my reputation so she could leave the marriage with a moral high ground and, presumably, a better settlement. She started sobbing. "How could you do this to me? After everything I sacrificed." Here's the thing about narcissists. They assume you are as impulsive as they are. She expected me to yell. She expected me to run. I did neither. I set my glass down on the bar counter. The sound was audible in the stunned silence. I walked toward the center of the patio. I didn't look angry. I looked bored. "Really?" I asked. My voice was level. "That's the story we're going with." "Don't you dare deny it," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. Real, actual tears. It was impressive. "I have proof. You've been withdrawing cash. You've been taking calls outside." I have been taking calls outside, I admitted, reaching into my jacket pocket, and I have been withdrawing cash. I pulled out my phone. I walked over to the DJ, a kid hired for the night who looked terrified, and held up an AUX cable. "Plug this in. Now." The DJ looked at Sarah, then at me. I must have looked terrifyingly calm because he plugged it in immediately. "You want to talk about betrayal?" I said into the mic, which I gently took from her hand. She was so shocked by my lack of reaction, she let go. "Let's talk about your work trip to Miami last month." "Stop it," she shrieked, lunging for the phone. "He's drunk. Turn it off." I sidestepped her like a matador. "Hit play," I told the DJ. The speakers crackled, and then crystal clear audio filled the patio. It wasn't a phone call. It was the interior audio from my SUV. Sarah had borrowed it 2 weeks ago when her car was in the shop. She didn't know I had installed a dual-channel dash cam that records a cabin when the engine is running for security purposes. Voice 1, "He's so clueless. He thinks I'm at a conference." Voice 2, "God, I missed you. Does he suspect anything?" Voice 1, "No. Ideally, I can provoke him into doing something stupid. If I can claim emotional distress, I can go for the house. I need you to be patient. We're almost there." Voice 2, "I love it when you're ruthless. Come here." Then the unmistakable sounds of them making out, followed by the GPS voice announcing, "Destination reached. The Ritz-Carlton." The silence on that patio was heavier than lead. I looked at Sarah. Her face had drained of all color. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked like a trapped animal. That, I pointed at the speaker, was recorded 2 weeks ago. And the man on the tape? That's your boss, who, coincidentally, was invited here tonight. I turned my gaze toward the back of the crowd, where her boss, a man in his late 40s named Greg, was trying to shrink into the hedges. But I wasn't done. The accusation of me cheating was the only card she had to play, and I had just burned the entire deck. Sarah stood there, her mouth opening and closing. That's edited, she stammered, looking wildly at her parents. He faked it. AI. It's AI. It's a dash cam recording, heavily time-stamped. I said, raising my voice slightly to be heard over the rising murmur. And the cheating you accuse me of? The secret meetings? The cash withdrawals? I pulled a manila envelope from inside my jacket. I had been carrying it around all night, waiting for the right moment. I tossed it onto the table in front of her parents. That is a retainer agreement for a divorce attorney. I wasn't seeing another woman. I was tracing the $20,000 you funneled out of our joint savings account to pay for hotels and gift for him. Her father, a stern man who had always liked me, opened the envelope. He looked at the bank statements attached. He looked at the photos the private investigator I'd hired had taken. Photos of Sarah and Greg holding hands at dinner, kissing in parking lots. Dad, please, she begged, trying to grab his arm. He pulled away violently. You did this in my house? On my anniversary? This is where the entitlement kicked into overdrive. Instead of apologizing, instead of showing an ounce of shame, Sarah turned on me with a venom I'd never seen before. You invaded my privacy, she screamed, stomping her foot. You stalked me. That's illegal. I'm going to sue you. I'm the victim here. You neglected me. You made me do this because you're so cold and distant. I'm cold. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. You just told your lover you were planning to provoke me so you could steal the house. That's premeditated malice. And regarding the legality, you were driving my car. The car is titled in my name. There is no expectation of privacy in a vehicle I own, especially when the recording device is visible on the windshield. Then, the second bomb dropped. Greg, the affair partner, had been trying to sneak out the side gate, but he was stopped by a woman in a red dress. His wife. I had invited her. I told Sarah I thought it would be good networking to have her boss's family there, and I had mailed a formal paper invitation to Greg's home address, addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Knowing Greg likely filtered his emails, but wouldn't catch the physical mail before. His wife did. Sarah, thinking she was the smartest person in the room, had agreed to the invite, assuming she could play it cool. Greg's wife walked up to him and slapped him so hard the sound echoed across the yard. 8 months, she hissed. You told me you were in therapy. Sarah realized her support system was crumbling. She tried to pivot to her friends, the bridesmaids from our wedding. You guys know me. You know how he is. He's manipulating all of you. When her friends stepped back. You told us he was abusive. You told us he controlled your money. But you just admitted on tape you were stealing from him. Sarah looked around the room. The realization was setting in. She had lost a narrative. But entitled people don't surrender. They escalate. Get out, she shrieked at me. This is my parents' house. Get out. Actually, her father said, his voice trembling with rage. He stays. You leave. What? She looked at her dad as if he had grown a second head. I'm your daughter. And you humiliated us, he said. You brought that man into our home. You lied to our faces. She turned to me, eyes narrowing. Fine, I'll leave, but you're hearing from my lawyers. I'm taking everything. The house, the 401k, the dog, everything. You'll be living in a box when I'm done with you. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, dragging Greg, who was bleeding from his lip, with her. I stayed for another hour to clean up the mess. I apologized to her parents, showed them the rest of the evidence, so there would be no, she said later, and then went home to an empty house. I changed the locks immediately. The next morning, the police were pounding on my door. I opened it to see 2 officers, with Sarah standing behind them, looking smug. "Sir, we're responding to a domestic disturbance call," one officer said. "Ma'am here claims you locked her out of her primary residence and that she fears for her safety because you have a weapon." The dirty tricks had begun. She was trying to get a temporary restraining order. If she got one, I'd be kicked out of the house immediately, and she would move back in. It's a classic playbook move to establish status quo possession of the home during a divorce. I changed the locks last night after she voluntarily left her parents' house to stay with her boyfriend. I said calmly, keeping my hands visible, "I am the sole owner of this property. I bought it before the marriage, and I have video surveillance of the entire property. She hasn't been here since yesterday morning." "He has a gun!" she yelled from behind the cop. "He threatened to shoot me if I came back." "I do not own a firearm," I told the officer, "and I have cameras inside the house too. You are welcome to check. I also have a recording of her threatening to take the house by any means necessary from last night." I showed the officers a footage from the Ring camera of her arriving 5 minutes ago, waiting for them, and rehearsing her crying face in the reflection of the window before they pulled up. The officers' demeanor changed instantly. They realized they were being weaponized. "Ma'am, you can't use us to gain entry for a civil dispute," the officer said. "If you want back in, you need a court order. If you file a false report about a weapon again, you're going to be the one in cuffs." She turned purple. "This is useless. I'm calling my lawyer." She left. But over the next 3 weeks, she tried everything. She drained the credit cards, which I had luckily already frozen. She called my employer and claimed I was embezzling company funds. HR laughed it off because I'm the one who audits the funds, and I had already pre-warned them about a volatile divorce. But her biggest mistake was financial. In the divorce filings, she demanded $4,000 a month in alimony, claiming she had become accustomed to a certain lifestyle and that my controlling behavior prevented her from advancing her career. My lawyer, a shark named Eleanor, was thrilled. She just opened the door to dissipation of marital assets. Eleanor told me, "In our state, while you don't always need a reason to divorce, if one party spends marital money on an affair, the court takes a very dim view of it. It's considered stealing from the marital estate." We subpoenaed everything. Her boss's credit card statements, her work emails, everything. We found that she hadn't just spent money on hotels. She had used our joint account to pay for a rental car for Greg when his was in the shop. She bought him a $2,000 watch. She even paid for a consultation for his failed side business. In total, she had blown through $35,000 of marital funds in 8 months. We walked into mediation, ready to end it. She sat there with her lawyer, looking defiant, wearing a designer dress I knew she bought on a credit card I was currently disputing. "We want the house," her lawyer said, "and $2,500 a month alimony for 3 years. I didn't say a word. Eleanor slid a binder across the table. "This is a forensic accounting of the dissipation of assets," Eleanor said. "Your client spent $35,000 on her paramour. Under the law, she owes my client half of that back immediately. Furthermore, since the house was purchased pre-marriage and marital funds were not used to pay down the principal in any significant way, it remains separate property. She contributed to the household," her lawyer argued. "She spent more on her boyfriend than she contributed to mortgage," Eleanor countered. "We are countersuing for the return of the dissipated assets. And," she paused for effect, "we are ready to depose her boss regarding the company funds they use for their trips. I'm sure the board of directors would love to see those transcripts." Sarah went pale. "You wouldn't." "Try me," I said. "He's already on thin ice. His wife filed for divorce last week. If he loses his job, you lose your meal ticket." The threat of exposing Greg's embezzlement of company travel funds broke her. She knew if I deposed him, he would perjure himself or admit to fraud. Either way, he was done, and she was desperately trying to monkey branch to him now that I was out of the picture. She settled. The terms were brutal but fair. No alimony. 0. I kept the house. She had 30 days to remove her personal effects, supervised by a constable. Regarding the money, she had to walk away from her share of my 401k to pay back the dissipation of assets. Basically, she traded her future retirement for the money she wasted on a fling. And because her false claims and delays drove up the cost and her financial misconduct was proven, she was responsible for 60% of my legal fees. The day she moved out was pathetic. She didn't have Greg with her. Apparently, once his wife took him to the cleaners and his job got shaky, he decided Sarah was too much drama and ghosted her. She had her dad helping her. He didn't look at me. He just looked tired. He loaded her boxes into a rental truck. She tried one last Hail Mary as she walked out the door. She stopped in the foyer, looking at the house she had decorated, the life she had blown up. "You know," she said, voice trembling, "I only did it because I felt lonely. If you had just paid more attention to me." "Don't!" I cut her off. "You didn't do it because you were lonely. You did it because you thought you were smarter than me. You thought you could keep the boyfriend and the bank account. You gambled and you lost. I hope you're happy," she spat. "You're going to die alone." "I'd rather die alone than live with a traitor," I replied. I closed the door. The click of the deadbolt was the most satisfying sound I have ever heard. It's been 6 months now. Greg got fired. Turns out his wife sent the evidence to his company's HR, and since they were subordinates and superiors, it was a violation of policy. She is living in a studio apartment with 2 roommates. She tries to post on social media like she's living her best life, but mutual friends tell me she's drowning in debt. She reached out once via email to ask if I wanted to grab coffee to catch up. I forwarded it to my lawyer and blocked her. I kept the house and renovated the kitchen, something she always wanted to do but we couldn't afford. Turns out, I can afford a lot of things when I'm not subsidizing a cheating spouse's lifestyle. I learned that being the boring, steady guy isn't a weakness. It allows you to see the playing field while everyone else is losing their minds.